Okay, welcome to the CRLD seminar for Thursday, the 2nd of June. It is my delight to introduce today's speaker. Mohanad al-Azzam has been working on and towards his confirmation for his PhD as a PhD candidate in the department for the last 11 or 12 months. And he's here today to share the beginning of his work and plans to take him through the next couple of years. So I'll hand over to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren. Thank you everyone for coming to my presentation, which is about the use of emoji in Jordanian discourse. And I hope you learn something new about these interesting pictographs. I remember when I first came across emoji, that was a while ago, and it was, I think, on Facebook when I started using Facebook, and they didn't seem to me interesting, and I even thought of them as being silly, and it never came to my mind that they will be the focus of my PhD thesis. Now the emoji are so popular and interesting, and they are effective tools of communication that we even started to judge our communication according to the use of emoji. Now, if I don't use emoji with my daughter, she thinks of me as being outdated. If I don't use them with my wife, she thinks of me as being boring and lacking emotion. And if I do use them with my friends, they think of me as being feminine or awkward. So they are interesting and they can be confusing. So I'll start my presentation with giving you a quick overview. So I will be giving you a quick background about the computer-mediated communication and human communication. Then I will talk about emoji and why we study emoji. I'll talk about the focus of the proposed study. And I will be talking about the methodology that I will be using. And I will give you a quick background about the progress about the work that I have been doing so far, and timeline, and then I will conclude my presentation. So let's start with the computer-mediated communication and human communication. Computer-mediated communication is known in literature as CMC, and I will be referring to it hereafter as CMC. The reason why I find CMC interesting because it incorporates many aspects of human communication in one place. You'll find the old with the modern, the synchronous with the asynchronous, the formal with the informal, the standard with the colloquial. Also, one interesting aspect of CMC is that it includes, it is characterized by multimodality. What I mean by multimodality is that it includes colorful forms of communication, such as visual, audio, and textual. Just to situate my interest in CMC, I need to give you a quick background about human communication. Here I provided a simple definition for human communication. It is the exchange. It is the exchange of information of the communication channels that are facial expression, prosody, and speech content. One important aspect of human communication is language, and language has two forms. The first form is face-to-face, where we use speech, and different linguistics features and clues such as facial expression and body language. And then we have the other part, which is text-based communication. So it's the use of information to get the messages across. And I will just give you a quick background about the history of text-based communication. So text-based communication started with the early cave paintings, and then came the use of Mesopotamian clay tokens, and they were used mainly for counting and accounting. Then came the Sumerians, where they used the written form for religious and ceremonial, where they used the written form for religious and ceremonial purposes. And then came the representations of the phonemes through the letters of the alphabet. And after that came the revolution in printing with the invention of the printing machine in around 1440. And the biggest shift in human communication came in the 20th century with the invention of the computer and the internet, and where human communication shifted dramatically and surpassed the limits of time and space. Now, communication is mediated through the use of different devices. But there was one problem with this form of communication, especially in its earliest stage. It was looked at as lacking emotion and expression. And since effective communication is not only what you say, it's how you say it. So CMC, when compared to face-to-face communication, was lacking the different linguistic and paralinguistic clues that are abundant in face-to-face communication, such as loudness, voice, tone, gesture, and body language, to name few. Users started inventing in new techniques to compensate for such lack, and to make their communication more effective and to get their messages across. So I'm going to talk about the different techniques that started in CMC and how they evolved. First, one of the earliest technique is the use of punctuation and capitalization for certain effects. As we can see here, the use of question marks here to indicate probably surprise, and the use of capitalization. Then came romanization in some languages. This unique linguistic feature came into existence because the early computer coding system was restricted to Latin-based languages to represent in the computer system, and non-Latin-based languages were left, such as Arabic and Cantonese. Therefore, users came with innovative techniques, such as the use of romanization. And in Arabic CMC, it is called Arabizi, which is the use of Arabic text through the Roman letters. And such a technique has its own rules and standards, such as the use of numerals to represent letters, Arabic letters and sounds that are not found in English language. So the use of 7 here is to represent the Arabic sound as ha. And this word means it's read as Alhamdulillah, and it means thank God. And then came emoticon and Emoji, which are also the use of punctuation marks to create simple facial gestures. And the difference between emoticon and Emoji is in orientation and in usage. So while emoticons are oriented vertically, emojis are oriented horizontally, and they seem to look at you. And in usage, emoticons are used and most popular in the Western cultures, while emoji are popular in the Eastern cultures, especially in Japan. They are, I think, popular until this day. And then came emoji, which are pictographs, and I'm going to talk about them in more details in the next slides. These pictographs can be used by themselves, and or they can be combined with text and other CMC techniques to help text-based communication. So what are emoji? Emoji, in fact, can be used as a singular and the plural because it's taken from the Japanese combination emoji, which is the E standing for a picture, and moji stands for written characters. Emoji are pictographs, and they are images of things. And they came into existence in the early 90s in Japan, and they became widespread and became popular across the globe. Emoji are encoded in a computer coding system that is called Unicode. So it is a coding system to represent different text and the scripts of different languages in the computer system. So they are giving code points in the system, which are a combination of letters and numbers. So yeah, and as we can see in the face of tears, face of joy, tears of joy emoji, and emoji can differ across different platforms. So that might create some communication problems if the difference was big. So let's see here if the difference can be slight, as we can see here in this emoji, and it can be a bit, they can be a bit different across different platforms, as we can see in the nerd emoji. So this sometimes can create problems. So this is why we need to study them across different platforms. Why do we study emoji? Emoji are studied across different disciplines. So they are studied in psychology, programming, and marketing, among others. While in linguistics, linguists looked at emoji because of their pragmatic, semantic, and communication functions. So they study them because they are used in conveying emotion. They express semantics, and they promote interpersonal communication. They are also studied for because they can express cultural meaning and as politeness management tools. Emoji are becoming fundamental in our daily communication. And we became so dependent on emoji that their use or lack of use might indicate lack of emotion or worst scenario, miscommunication. And emoji, some emojis, especially gesture-based emoji, can have cultural meaning specific to some cultures. So because of their symbolic meaning can differ from one culture to another. This combination to many might seem a bit strange, but in some Middle Eastern culture, and especially in Jordan, where I come from, this combination is completely normal. It is used to indicate a kind of a threat. This is why necessitate usage based and cross-cultural approaches in studying them. So why this study might be important? Because while most literature focuses on emoji usage in major languages of Europe and East Asia, Arabic language has not received much attention. And there is a widespread belief in the literature that they can have fixed meanings as positive, neutral, or negative. This is most apparent in computer-based studies, especially in sentiment analysis, where they are giving specific meaning and looked at as only representative of the emotional states and feelings of their users. This is not always the case because not all emoji are face-based, and emoji can be context sensitive. So we need different approaches to study them. And emoji can differ, as I explained before, they can differ from one platform to another and from one culture to another, and need to be studied in different platforms and different cultures. And this proposed study will take all these factors into consideration. I just as I mentioned before, I come from Jordan, and to those people who don't know much about Jordan, Jordan is a Middle Eastern country with a population of about 10 million, and Arabic is the main language, is the official language, and English is the de facto language in Jordan. Jordan is a high literacy rate country with a literacy rate of about 98% in 2018, according to the UNESCO. And Jordanian users, they use social media so much. In fact, if we look at the diagram here, we can see Jordan as coming the first for social networking use in 2017, and Australia coming fourth. So while they are heavy users of social media, they are not properly represented in CMC. And this is why I am interested in looking at their communication in CMC, and specifically the use of emoji. So what data I will be using to accomplish my objectives? So the research areas of focus, while I'll be using a mixed methodology approach to be applied to different data sources. The first data source will be Facebook. We'll look at the use of emoji in the 3 different Jordanian online communities. to investigate whether online genres have impacts on emoji practices and use. The second one will be, I will be looking at WhatsApp to look at Jordanian, to look at the use of emoji in, to look at Jordanian private family chat. I will analyze emoji usage and practices in WhatsApp, and I will see and I will investigate if private online discourse practices differ from public discourse practices from the data that I will be analyzing from the other sources. Then I will look in Twitter to explore cross-cultural variation in gestures. This will be done by investigating the cultural meaning and usage of some gesture-based emojis. Then I will use a survey to draw on insights from usage data, providing more robust, generalizable results. The survey will provide valuable data because they come from users' perspectives in regards to emoji usage, and they test the validity and of the results from the previous chapters. Why I will be using a mixed methodology? A mixed methodology allows for more comprehensive analysis of a problem, providing much needed information from different perspectives. It is effective because it combines the strength points of qualitative and quantitative research while improving their weakness. And it combines approaches from different fields of study, thus providing more comprehensive view from different scientific perspectives. I will be using Crosswell and Crosswell exploratory sequential mixed methods design, and I find this design suitable because it collects data and measurement from individuals through qualitative methods and apply them on a large sample to see if the results are applicable and generalizable. It is also specifically designed for studies that combine qualitative and quantitative data methods, and because of its sequential property where the results from each data source are used to build on the other. And I also will be using different scientific approaches to answer my research questions. This will be from sociolinguistic variation approach, from discourse analysis, from corpus analysis, and from communities of practice approach. So I will use this design to try and answer my research questions. So my first research question is, how are emoji used in Jordanian online communication and for what functions? The answer to this question will provide a general overview of how Jordanians users of social media communicate using emoji. The second research question, does culture play a role in the interpretation of emoji? While variation in emoji usage has been noted, it is mainly related to age and online activity. And there has been no systematic study of cross-cultural variation. Specifically, this study will look at how some emoji, especially gesture-based emoji, can have cultural meaning and because their symbolic meaning can differ from one culture to another. My third question, does social media genres have an impact on emoji use? The aim of this question is twofold. To investigate the possibility of how emoji practices can differ from private and public interaction, and to look at the possibility to see how emoji practices and usage can differ in communities within one social media platform. In this case, it will be Facebook. My fourth research question, what are the collective practices and patterns that arise from individual emoji usage, and what do they reveal about online communities of practice? The answer to this question will help to provide information on how individual emoji usage and practice can be governed and regulated by group usage and communities' acceptable behavior and social norms specific to certain online communities. Now I will talk about my progress so far. The proposed study took all proper measurements to ensure the privacy of all participants in all data sources. So I have obtained a human ethics approval from the Human Research Ethics Committee for all the proposed data sources. And I have constructed a small exploratory Facebook corpus that represent 3 Facebook genres. The corpus is made of 3 different data snapshots. And so Facebook will provide a valuable source as a representative of a platform of CMC public interaction. And it will provide information, valuable information on how individual emoji usage might be governed and regulated by group usage. So if we look here at these 3 groups, they represent the 3 different genres that I spoke about. The first group, so the first group is taken from a Jordanian feminist influencer page representing high formal language register with around 42,000 followers. The influencer uses her page to publish short stories tackling Jordanian social issues, mainly related to Jordanian women rights. And she uses modern standard Arabic, and sometimes she uses specialized terms that are directed to the educated population. The second group is taken from a Jordanian male satirist, columnist, and critic page representing casual language register. He is followed by 487,000 followers. The author is known for his critical posts, political critical posts about the government policies, and he uses simple language and uses specifically Northern Jordanian dialect, which is associated with the hardworking class. The final genre is represented by the third group, which is a Jordanian online news network representing news register, combining formal and informal, argumentative, persuasive, and interactive style. The page publishes local and international news and sometimes runs political poll, opinion polls, sorry. The next slide here, I show you some of the examples taken from the three groups representing the three genres. As we can see, these groups seem to represent different topics, different audiences, and they seem to represent different functions. These are translations from the original posts. I also conducted emoji frequency, and this is an example from the emojis from the first stage for the three groups. Just to remind you that group 1 is dominated by female users, group 2 is dominated by male users, same with group 3. If we can see here, group 1 stands out from the other groups in terms of emoji selection and variety. And also, if we see that some emoji gestures, gesture-based emoji are used quite a bit in group 2 and group 3. So what I'll be doing is to look at emoji usage, gesture-based, especially gesture-based emoji, and to look at their meaning, their cultural meaning, to see if they were used in the Jordanian cultural sense or in the Western cultural sense. In the Jordanian cultural sense, as I hinted about before, they are used as a threatening gesture. In the Western cultural sense, they are used as an okay hand gesture. And I also will see if meaning of this emoji has shifted because of Western cultural literacy influence on Jordanian users. This is why I want to look at Twitter to get more data to answer this question. I also conducted an analysis to analyze the audience in the three groups. This is a cumulative analysis of the three groups based on gender. And we can see here that group 1 represent the narrative creative writing, group 2 represent the cynical critical writing, and group 3 represent the news writing. I also conducted an analysis of emoji usage according to gender. So if we bring the two tables together, we can see that female users dominate group 1 in terms of audience, and males dominate group 2 and 3. And we can see emoji usage in the second diagram, but we can see that even though that female users make a small percentage in group 2 and 3, they contribute far more to the interaction in terms of the use of emoji. My plan for the near future, I will be I'll be collecting data for the final time stage in June this year. Additional work on emoji and emoji distribution in the comments will follow. And then I will be looking at WhatsApp data and Twitter, and then I'll use the survey to finish my analysis. So this is the thesis outline, and you can see that Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, and the survey will make the body of my and the argument of my thesis. This is the timeline. And to conclude my presentation, Arabic is one of the world's global languages, but the work on emoji has been driven by Western and East Asian languages and cultures. Jordanian CMC users are among the highest users of social networking and need to be given more attention in CMC studies. We need to make sure that what we know about emoji represents a wide range of languages and users. And the need to look at gesture-based emoji usage in different social media platforms, which is a rather neglected aspect in emoji research. In fact, gesture research, especially from the Middle East, is scarce, and this will provide even more data on gesture, much needed data on gestures, which is the main focus of my supervisor, Dr. Lauren, which is this is why I'm lucky, because she will be of great help to my research. So thank you for your listening, and if there is any question, please, I'm here to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mohanad. I can see some applaud reactions there in the chat. You've given us plenty of time for questions. So if you have a question for Mohanad and you'd like him to dig into anything in more detail, please either pop it in the chat, or if you're okay with the recording still rolling, you can join us there. We might stop the screen share so we can fit more people. There we go. So David has put a question in, but I can see you've unmuted as well, David, if you'd just like to ask it.
Okay, I'll do it with a video. The video work, right? You get this sign here. It seems to me in Arabic culture, it seems to be threatening.
Correct.
Whereas in Western culture, it's okay. Now, it's
sorry,
okay.
Just sorry to interrupt. It's one of the few meanings, so it can be used both in Arabic. I think it might be the Western culture might have an impact on the Jordanian culture, but from when I was young, I remember this sign, this gesture as being threatening. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wonder why. I mean, it seems to me that I can see why it means okay, because it's spelling an O and maybe a K there. Where does the threatening aspect of it come from? I found that very interesting.
I think if Dr. Lauren approves with me, I think this came from originally from as a zero sign. So
that's also very interesting, because
yes. Is that correct? Yeah.
In the West, for me, that means zero. But I've seen in Singapore, I've seen a football player. He was kicked down. He got up and he did that, and what it meant was 3. So I find it very interesting that sign in my culture means 0, but in Singapore that's 3. So you've got the same sign meaning 2 different things. But anyway, that's a separate. But I find it very interesting that that's a threat, and that's really scary as well. That if I've got a sign there, which to me is good, okay, and I go to a Middle Eastern country, and it's threatening, and somebody say, you know, that's really. Would it be the same throughout the Arabic world, in Egypt and Saudi and places, or is it just in Jordan?
I think in Turkey, from what I read in the literature, this sign, if it's used specifically with the LGTB community, it can be threatening. So it is used for certain communities, probably, I don't know. And that's why I read in, in Turkey.
Okay, and we've got some other. So in China, it's swearing, and yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So part of the challenges Mohanad mentioned is a lot of the information we have is anecdotal, and there are a few people who've done this kind of lexical documentation of these cultural gestures, but certainly not with a lot of specificity. And so Mohanad's going to try and use Twitter data with the emoji to kind of do the kind of distribution that we don't actually have a lot of documentation for.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have another question, if I can. You mentioned Arabese, which is using Roman letters to represent English, right? I wonder if it's standardized or if it is just if people do it differently. Do people ever? Is there any standard adopted for using Roman letters for Arabic?
There is no specific standards, but there are popular standards, such as the use of numbers, as I mentioned, to stand for sounds and letters that are not found in the English language. So so it has, to a certain degree, some standards.
Yeah, because I wanted to compare it with the Malay world in places like Brunei and Malaysia, where you have two different ways of representing the language. You have Jawi and Roman, and it's absolutely standardized. I wonder, it sounds to me like you have conventions but no standard in the Arabic world. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's I think it's becoming less and less popular because it was used in the early stages of CMC, where the coding system was restricted to Latin-based languages such as English and other French. Yeah, so it's becoming less and less popular, but at its early stages, it was popular, and I used to use it myself. Yeah.
I guess a little bit like text speak, when you had to hand type out an SMS and you'd use the number 2 for the word TO, the kind of conventions but not rules, and they thought it was going to change English, and here we are, relatively unscathed. James.
Yeah, thanks. I might have missed this because I'm working at home today and we've had some deliveries, and so every time I have a delivery, I have to deal with a barking dog. I was kind of, in terms of the quantification of the relative use of emojis, normally when we talk about variation in language and we're calculating percentages, we look at different ways of saying the same thing. And so the idea behind that would be, what are the options that people have in terms of use of emojis? And when I was looking at the breakdown of the frequency of the emojis, it wasn't clear to me, were you saying that these had equivalent functions or meanings, or was this just sort of a general picture of the use of them?
It's a general picture of emoji use, and I found some usage differences, and I did track some emoji like how they are used. I did track some cultural usage in the use of the OK hand sign. So you do find some cultural based difference and gender based difference. Yeah, as you saw in the example, women tend to use, from the data so far I have, women tend to use more love hearts and more flowers and more so yep. I don't know if I got your
well, I guess the question is when you use an emoji, is it always for the same purpose? So I'm just thinking about my own use. So sometimes I'll use like a winky one if I'm being playful, whereas I'll use like a crying, laughing face if I'm making a joke or something. So I wouldn't, if I were gonna like look at choices that people are making, I don't know that I would include those as in the same count because they're being used for different purposes. So I know you had them in different different types of message, but I wonder if there's a way of sort of looking at the specific function that each emoji is being used for, if there's a way of doing that. I don't know enough about sort of discourse functions and the corresponding emoji options to be able to say how to do that, but that I think is something that maybe you should look at in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I think face-based emoji, they have kind of popular meaning, and some like gesture-based emoji can differ in meaning from one person to another and from one culture to another. So it's a kind of, it varies, kind of individual. You can give them, individually, or they can have like more clear emoji, like smiling face or crying face. They have popular meaning, while others, they might be interpreted differently. That's all I think. Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't know if this answers your question.
Although I'll talk to you more about it at some point.
Yes, thanks.
I wonder if I can ask, you mentioned that women use more emojis than men in your data. Is that true for all cultures? My guess is it is. Do you have any data for that?
From my research in the literature, the data, the exploratory data that I have conducted, the analysis, it does seem to be similar to what's found in the Western culture, where women tend to express, women tend to use emoji a bit more than men. Yeah.
Do we have any explanation for that? Why do women use more emojis than men?
But I can't be like judgmental, but I think because it goes to it comes to they're probably express more emotion than men. It comes to probably the woman's nature. Yeah, probably they express more emotion than men.
I wonder if it's women are a bit brighter than men and quicker to take up new technologies like this. We're a little bit slow.
Yeah, I assume.
Yeah, I think as James notes, we can probably link it to some other trends we see in linguistic innovation when it comes to sociolinguistics in general. So I have some very enthusiastic students outside the window. The other thing Mohanad has downplayed in this, but I just want to kind of emphasize, and one way he's going to explore this question in more detail is that the WhatsApp group is a informal family social group, and he's done a lot of work with the ethics team and with his family, who are very kindly participating in this. A lot of the work on gendered use of emoji has been very public facing social media. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in a more private social media platform. Stephen, you've said you'd like to ask a question, but you've popped it in a direct message. Okay, good.
I popped it in just to let you know. So early on in the talk, you gave us some examples of different forms of emojis across different platforms. And so this led me to wonder, since I've had some dealings with Unicode, where you have to define everything very carefully and explain exactly what it is, there must, or are there particular features that define these different symbols? And I guess, does the community of users recognize the features that Unicode thinks defines these different symbols?
I think it comes also not only to decisions from Unicode, it also comes to decisions from the actual platforms. And there are Unicode is made of different software companies, among them the social media platforms. So they, to a degree, they have a say of what they will be using. So that's why you can find such slight difference. I think it's the decision come from the platforms as well as Unicode. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Just a supplementary question. So most of the other things that you talked about that people use in chatting online comes from writing that we traditionally do by handwriting, but I've never even thought about this before because I almost never use emojis for any reason. But do people actually write them by hand? Much?
From what I read, they started with early records show the use of emoticons, not emoji. So that goes back to the even 17th century or 18th century. They used them to express more ideas and more emotion, and I think they go back to quite a bit in history. The use of emoticons, but not emoji. Yeah, emoji. They're completely new. Yeah. So the use of punctuation marks. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen. We probably have time for one more quick question if you have a burning question on your mind. Otherwise, you can always get in touch with Mohanad if you have any other questions. I'm going to end the recording here. Thank you all for joining us, and please join me again in thanking Mohanad.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.